It's really nice to be introduced tonight by Mike. The very first ideas session that I attended, Mike was the speaker that night, and I had to email him afterwards because I felt such a resonance with the kinds of ideas that he expressed and the work that he's been involved in. And we've continued to stay in touch and talk and collaborate on some things since then, about a year and a half ago. Great also to hear about the work of Acorn in the community. Acorn is famous, and I really noticed the first reports I heard about Acorn, I think it was in the newspaper or on the radio. The idea that Acorn is active in our community is great. And the music, Alicia, I've been sitting back there feeling a bit nervous about making this presentation, and the music really helped. Nicole said that would be the case, and she was right. I think in my next life, I'm going to learn how to play the guitar, and if I do, I want to be invited to be a guest musician at future Ideas Powered by Passion. Let's see if this works. There we go. So my talk tonight is going to be about community conversations, people connecting for change. Before I get into it, though, I want to share a little bit of something I brought from home. I'm not sure how many of you saw the poster that I gather circulated for the event tonight, but I didn't see it. But I heard that the picture on it was a picture that it's been on the Tamarack website for some time, and it's really not the best picture. But I brought a new one with me. There I am. It's by a local artist. It's my daughter, Adley. And I think the likeness is pretty darn good. With the exception of the hair, since my hair is not green. And there's Adley. Adley's not only the artist who's done the work on this presentation, but she's also the muse for the comments that I want to make tonight. A couple of days ago, really quite out of the blue, Adley said to me as I was walking up the stairs, "You know, Dad, fairies can't hear what's in your head. They can only hear what's in your heart." That stopped me in mid-stride. My first thought was, boy, she knows a lot about fairies. And my second thought was, whoa, that kid's got my number. How'd you do that? I say she's got my number because I've always had an interest in ideas, especially ideas about societies, communities, and why they are the way they are. But what I've always cared about most is putting those ideas into action. And for that, you really need your head and your hands connected by your heart. And I'd have to admit, that's not always been the easiest thing for me. So just to make sure that the fairies hear it, what's behind my talk tonight is an excitement about being back in Cape Breton after about 16 years away, and a great sense of hope for the future of our community. This is a great place to live, and I'm excited to be back, in part because there's such opportunity to work on issues of community change, because the needs are great, but also because people are willing and able to connect with one another and find ways of tackling those challenges that we face. I found that in the past, and since I've been back now a year and a half, I'm finding it again. But what I'm imagining you saying now, at least some of you, is, but Eric, don't you know that we're losing 1,000 people a year and falling into a hopeless spiral of decline? And I would say, sure, I know that we're losing population, and we have a host of other problems as well. But do you know about the echo cycle? The echo cycle represents the cycle of life. And it isn't a train track running in a straight line from here to some dead end. It's a roller coaster that loops back around. When you're on the downhill slope, you may think you're going to die, but the next thing you know, you're on the top of the world again. So now I'd like to switch metaphors and explain that the echo cycle is a more ecological way of understanding the change process. It draws on the image of a forest, which grows to maturity, then enters a phase of creative destruction, releasing energy and materials to start life anew. And my point is that the old trees of Cape Breton's industrial era may have fallen, but sprouts and seedlings are everywhere to be seen. People talking about ways to improve housing, build the assets of youth, protect the environment, foster arts and culture, renew our economy, and so on. Since moving back to Cape Breton, I see in the paper nearly every day another interesting and constructive initiative that someone is taking to build the community. Great, you might say. We're saved. We're on the echo roller coaster. We have sprouts and seedlings. Life is good. Well, not necessarily, I would jump in, pointing to two parts of the echo cycle that you may not have noticed. Although there's a cycle to life, there is no guarantee that we'll move through it. There are traps along the way that may hold us back. The rigidity trap, when the old ways won't release their energy, and the poverty trap, when new efforts lack what they need to grow and to flourish. So if I had to say, I'd suggest that that is where we are now in our community, simultaneously caught in the rigidity trap and the poverty trap. And the question is, how do we get beyond those traps? I don't precisely have the answer. No one really does, I think. But after all these years working on and thinking about community change, what I do know is that we have parts of the answer, and we each have parts of the answer. And together we can find our way. And really, all I want to do this evening is give a nudge or two in favor of our thinking about our situation in those terms. For the past 12 years or so, I've been involved with a collaborative action learning project called Vibrant Communities, a pan-Canadian initiative exploring community-based strategies for reducing poverty. More specifically, what we've been exploring is 5 puzzle pieces, a series of promising practices for reducing poverty. At the center, as you can see, poverty reduction as opposed to poverty alleviation. And then around the rim, comprehensive thinking and action, addressing the multiple, there we go, addressing the multiple root causes of poverty. Multi-sectoral collaboration, bringing people together from different backgrounds to address the issue. Community asset building, building on the strengths that exist in communities. And community learning and change, reflecting on our work and improving as we go. And the results of this work have been substantial. Together, Vibrant Communities partners have launched over 200 poverty reduction initiatives, reduced poverty for more than 200,000 households in Canada, raised millions of dollars, most of it at the local level, engaged 2,200 organizations as partners, and the list goes on. So my point here is that collaborative initiatives can achieve large-scale, significant impacts. In many ways, Vibrant Communities is part of a new generation of community work that brings together a wide range of partners to collectively tackle the multiple and interrelated aspects of complex issues. More than anything, what I think we've learned is the value of understanding the nature of complex problems. Complex problems are not just more complicated than other problems, they're different in kind. What makes them different isn't the number of factors that they involve, but the dynamic relationships among those factors. And as a result, they can't be tackled effectively with conventional techniques that normally break down problems into their component parts and then solve each one individually. New ways of working are required that bring people together, each involved with different aspects of the problem, and having them continually adjust their relationships to each other as they try to address the issues that are so intertwined. Now, the chart on this page shows some of the dimensions of complex issues and how new strategies and new approaches have been identified for dealing with them. I'm not going to go into any of the technicalities about that kind of approach tonight, because that's not really the point of the presentation that I want to make. More so, what I want to do is give you a feel for the nature of these sorts of problems and the kinds of responses that are required. And I think this picture, this image of the four friends standing on a rubber raft, supporting each other as the wind blows against them, as the waves rock the raft that they're standing on, as the raft shifts beneath their feet, as the weight shifts on each other's shoulders. All of that, I think, gives you the image and the feel of what it's like to have multiple issues and influences impacting on one another, and the kind of challenge that a community faces in trying to address them. We actually have the technology for responding to these sorts of issues. We don't have all the answers, but we know a lot of the basic elements. A common agenda, a broadly shared vision for change, shared measurement, ways of tracking the progress of our efforts and adjusting as we go, mutually reinforcing activities, looking for synergies across different issues and concerns, continuous communication to build the relationships and maintain momentum, and a convening body to provide the full-time glue and connective tissue that the community requires to address a variety of issues simultaneously. But underlying all this remains something even more basic: the community conversations that open people to one another and allow them to join their efforts. My colleague, one of my colleagues at the Tamarack Institute, Paul Bourne, wrote a book about community conversations, in which he described them as being about engaging community members in a dialogue that mobilizes the collective energy of a community. And then he went into more detail about what conversations like that do for us. They open us to other people's perspective. They spark expectations for action. They build the trust and collaboration needed to work together. And they uncover the shared aspirations that move us forward. As I mentioned earlier, there are many conversations already happening in our community. One I know particularly well is exploring ways to build a stronger community-based food system. We've convened just one gathering so far of a whole range of people involved in different aspects of food issues: health, farming, food security, people working in food banks, the community economic development aspects of the issue. And already we've identified at least 4 specific opportunities where people can partner with each other across some of the organizational and sectoral differences that exist in order to take constructive action around those food issues. The challenge then, I think, is simply how to build on the beginnings that already exist in the community, to link what's already happening by looking for synergies across these different areas of interest, to expand them to include more people in the process, and deepen them through an ongoing process of learning and change. These are things that we can do. We have the technology to do them, and they can achieve significant impacts for the well-being of our community. So in closing, I'd like to share a video called Where Good Ideas Come From. It's a video that I like because its basic message is that innovation is a social process. When we connect with one another, we find the answers we need to make good things happen. Now, I said we have the technology for conducting comprehensive community initiatives. We're not sure whether we've got the technology to play this video, but we're going to try. Doug's going to hit the right button for me.
For the past 5 years, I've been investigating this question of where good ideas come from. It's the kind of problem I think all of us are intrinsically interested in. We want to be more creative, we want to come up with better ideas, we want our organizations to be more innovative. I've looked at this problem from an environmental perspective. What are the spaces that have historically led to unusual rates of creativity and innovation? And what I've found in all of these systems, there are these recurring patterns that you see again and again that are crucial to creating environments that are unusually innovative. One pattern I call the slow hunch, that breakthrough ideas almost never come in a moment of great insight, in a sudden stroke of inspiration. Most important ideas take a long time to evolve, and they spend a long time dormant in the background. It isn't until the idea has had 2 or 3 years, sometimes 10 or 20 years to mature, that it suddenly becomes accessible to you and useful to you in a certain way. And this is partially because good ideas normally come from the collision between smaller hunches, so that they form something bigger than themselves. So you see a lot in the history of innovation, cases of someone who has half of an idea. There's a great story about the invention of the World Wide Web in Tim Berners-Lee. This is a project that Berners-Lee worked on for 10 years. But when he started, he didn't have a full vision for this new medium he was going to invent. He started working on one project as a side project to help him organize his own data. He scrapped that after a couple years, and he started working on another thing. And only after about 10 years did the full vision of the World Wide Web come into being. That is, more often than not, how ideas happen. They need time to incubate, and they spend a lot of time in this partial hunch form. The other thing that's important when you think about ideas this way is that when ideas take form in this hunch state, they need to collide with other hunches. Oftentimes, the thing that turns a hunch into a real breakthrough is another hunch that's lurking in somebody else's mind. And you have to figure out a way to create systems that allow those hunches to come together and turn into something bigger than the sum of their parts. That's why, for instance, the coffee house in the Age of the Enlightenment, or the Parisian salons of modernism, were such engines of creativity, because they created a space where ideas could mingle and swap and create new forms. When you look at the problem of innovation from this perspective, it sheds a lot of important light on the debate we've been having recently about what the internet is doing to our brains. Are we getting overwhelmed with an always connected, multitasking lifestyle? And is that going to lead to less sophisticated thoughts as we move away from the slower, deeper, contemplative state of reading, for instance? Obviously, I'm a big fan of reading, but I think it's important to remember that the great driver of scientific innovation and technological innovation has been the historic increase in connectivity, in our ability to reach out and exchange ideas with other people, and to borrow other people's hunches and combine them with our hunches and turn them into something new. That really has, I think, been, more than anything else, the primary engine of creativity and innovation over the last 600 or 700 years. And so yes, it's true we're more distracted. But what has happened that is really miraculous and marvelous over the last 15 years is that we have so many new ways to connect and so many new ways to reach out and find other people who have that missing piece that will complete the idea we're working on, or to stumble serendipitously across some amazing new piece of information that we can use to build and improve our own ideas. That's the real lesson of where good ideas come from, that chance favors the connected mind.
So that probably does a better job than I might have myself to give some sense of a collision theory of community change, where we try to connect our minds, connect our ideas, and use those to create the new ways of doing things that can serve the better of the community. Thanks.